Are you feeling stuck in your fertility journey and wondering if IVF is your only option? Before you go down that road, let's talk. In this episode, I'm breaking down why IVF gets pushed so fast, especially after a vasectomy reversal, and what you really need to do before making that call. We'll cover the emotional weight of IVF, the overlooked root causes of infertility, and the 5 things you should do first to boost your natural fertility and your IVF odds if you do go that route. This is the episode I wish someone had handed me when I was told IVF was the only option. Feeling like this whole baby making journey is never going to work out? You've done it all, diet changes, supplements, tracking your cycle, and yet the pregnancy test is negative. It's so frustrating, and you're asking yourself, why isn't this happening for us? I'm Susan Gladstein, a holistic fertility coach and mom to 7, including 2 miracle babies after a vasectomy reversal, and I get it. Being told everything looks fine by doctors while still feeling stuck can leave you feeling hopeless and confused. On this podcast, I'll share practical, natural ways to support your fertility without all the overwhelm. Forget the everything's normal talk and the rush into fertility treatments. I'm here to show you a better way. If you're ready to take practical steps that fit with God's plan for your family, you're in the right place. I truly believe that you can have the baby you've been praying for. You've been doing everything right. Tracking your cycle, tweaking your supplements, praying so hard. Been trying to stay hopeful even when your heart is tired and your body feels like it's betraying you. But if you're being honest, you're exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You're carrying all of the weight of the weight. You're holding it together for everyone else while quietly wondering, is it ever going to happen for me? And if that's where you are right now, I want to invite you to something completely different. From July 30th to August 4th, I'm hosting an all-inclusive women's retreat in Costa Rica. This isn't a fertility retreat. It's a permission slip to rest, to receive, and to finally feel cared for. It's for the woman who's been carrying the emotional weight of this journey for far too long. For someone who needs someone to gently say, God's timing isn't something you have to force. You can take a deep breath. He's still working, even when you're resting. If the idea of hormone-supportive meals made just for you, nervous system support through movement and stillness, a sacred space to cry, laugh, nap, breathe, and just be, or if no decisions to make, no to-do list to manage, just peace. If this speaks to your heart, I want you with us. You'll leave lighter, more grounded, more you, before the pressure of trying to conceive took over your life. And because I know how hard it can feel to invest in yourself while you're still waiting, when you book one of the last 2 spots remaining, you'll receive a free post-retreat fertility coaching session with me so that you can take everything that you gain from the retreat and turn it into a clear, personalized plan to support the baby you've been praying for. If your heart is whispering, I need this, I hope you'll listen. Head over to susangladstein.com/retreat and claim your spot before it's gone. You don't have to wait until you're pregnant to feel whole again. One of the biggest questions I hear from couples is, should we just do IVF? And I get it. When you've been trying for months or years and the clock feels like it's ticking louder every day, IVF starts to feel like the only path forward. But what if the real issue isn't that you need IVF? What if it's that your body or his isn't functioning optimally yet? So today, I want to give you a clear, compassionate look at IVF, when it's actually necessary, when it's not, and how to know the difference. So let's talk about that pressure. If you're a few months post-reversal, you're not pregnant yet, chances are someone, maybe a doctor, maybe even a well-meaning friend or someone in a Facebook group, they've already said something like, you might want to look into IVF. And I get it. When you've been trying for a while and that positive test still isn't showing up, IVF starts to sound like a next logical step. But here's what I want you to hear today. Just because it's being suggested doesn't mean it's the right next step. And just because it's common doesn't mean it's comprehensive. I've worked with so many couples who've been told to just do IVF without ever being offered a full fertility workup, without digging into why things aren't working, and without ever getting the support to actually optimize their health first. And you might be wondering, why is that? Why is IVF pushed so fast, especially after a vasectomy reversal? Let's unpack that because there are a few reasons and most couples aren't told any of them. First off, the business model. The fertility industry is massive. Globally, it's worth over $37 billion. And IVF, that's the moneymaker. Most IVF procedures are cash pay, and the average cycle with medications can run you $20,000 or more. So while there are absolutely amazing and compassionate doctors out there, the truth is fertility clinics are businesses. And I'm just going to say this. There's financial incentive to move couples towards treatment, especially fast-track treatments like IVF and ICSI, because that's where the revenue is. And that pressure gets dialed way up when you're over 35 or even post-reversal. Next, the 6 or 12-month rule. You've probably heard this one before. If you're over 35 and haven't conceived after 6 months, or if you're under 35 and it's been a year, it's time to see a fertility specialist. But no one really stops to ask, are you actually ovulating regularly? Is your husband's sperm quality where it should be after a reversal? Are you even timing intercourse correctly? Is your luteal phase long enough to support implantation? So many couples that I talked to weren't taught any of this. The clock just starts ticking, and when it doesn't work, the system labels you infertile and recommends treatment, not actual answers. And that's where the real gap is. Listen, you're not broken, you're just not supported. And another reason IVF gets pushed post-reversal, because male factor infertility is misunderstood and underaddressed. And I say this with love for the entire medical community, but most conventional fertility practices don't do enough to support men, especially after a vasectomy reversal. Instead of taking time to optimize sperm through nutrition, detox, hormone balance, and lifestyle shifts, the assumption is, let's skip to ICSI, we'll inject the sperm into the egg and be done with it. But here's what they're not telling you. If the sperm isn't healthy, injecting it into an egg doesn't fix the issue. In fact, studies show that poor sperm health, even when ICSI is used, can lead to failed fertilization, poor embryo quality, and higher miscarriage rates. Sperm is 50% of the embryo. It deserves at least 50% of the attention. And it takes a full 74 to 90 days to regenerate. So if no one is addressing that window, you're rushing into IVF with the same sperm that hasn't been working naturally. Obviously, there's the panic, especially for my mamas who are over 35. You know this one well. As soon as you hit that number, you're labeled advanced maternal age and the panic sets in. Suddenly, you're up late Googling success rates and wondering if your body has run out of time. And here's the thing I wish every woman knew. You can be 40 and have healthier eggs than someone who's 25. Listen, I'm proof of that. Egg quality matters more than quantity. And yes, egg quality can be improved. There are mitochondria in your eggs, and those mitochondria can respond to the right environment. Nutrients, sleep, antioxidants like CoQ10, reduced toxin exposure, all of it makes a difference. But that takes time and support. And in the conventional model, you're rarely given either. And finally, something you probably haven't been told, that unexplained infertility diagnosis, it's almost always explainable. The problem is that there's no reason. The problem is that conventional fertility care only looks at a tiny slice of the whole picture. They're typically not testing for inflammation markers, oxidative stress, thyroid antibodies, nutrient deficiencies, blood sugar instability, toxin overload, and advanced sperm testing like DNA fragmentation. So when the basic tests look fine, they say, well, we don't know why you're not getting pregnant. Let's try IVF. But there is a why, and it matters. Because even if you do end up choosing IVF later, you want your body to be in the best possible place for it to work. And if no one has taken the time to uncover the real root cause of why you're not conceiving, IVF might not work either. So let's keep it real. IVF is often sold as the ultimate solution, especially when things aren't happening fast enough. But here's the truth. IVF isn't a guarantee. It's rarely a one and done process. And it comes with an emotional, physical, and financial toll that no one hands you a brochure about. So let's talk about numbers, because I think you deserve facts, not fluff. So let's talk about real IVF success rates and not the Instagram version. What matters most isn't how many eggs they retrieve or even how many embryos they grow. It's this: how many cycles actually lead to a healthy baby. And here's what the data says about live birth rates per IVF cycle using your own eggs. If you're under 35, it's around 41 to 45%. If you're between 35 and 37, that number is about 33 to 36%. If you're 38 to 40, it's 21 to 26%. If you're 41, 42, you're looking at around 10 to 15%. And if you're over 42, that number is about 4 to 8%. And those are not really high odds, especially when you've been pouring everything that you have and more into the process. And if male factor issues haven't fully been addressed post-reversal, these numbers can drop even further. So what does IVF really cost? Let's break that down so you're not completely blindsided. One IVF cycle costs about $12,000 to $20,000. Medication adds another $5,000 to $7,000. And if you need ICSI, which is pretty common after reversal, that's an extra $1,500 to $3,000. If embryos are frozen and transferred later, that's another $5,000 plus per transfer. You want genetic testing, that's another $3,000 to $6,000. And the kicker, most couples need more than one cycle. So by the time many families take home a baby, if they do, they've spent $30,000 to $50,000 or more. And that's not including the time off work, travel to the clinic, or even the emotional bandwidth that it takes to deal with all of these costs. And something else I really want to address is about the toll, the part that really no one warns you about. I will say that there are more people sharing their stories online, so it's a little bit more relatable, but IVF is not just physically demanding, it's deeply emotional. Every step, from the injections to the egg retrieval, from waiting for embryo updates to surviving the 2-week wait, it's filled with hope and fear, sometimes in the same breath. You're navigating hormone overload and mood swings, bloating, fatigue, and headaches, emotional isolation from friends who don't get it, the pressure to be strong no matter what, and the grief of failed cycles or miscarriages, often in silence. I've had women tell me that they felt like they've lost themselves in this process, that their relationship became all about timing and protocols, and that their faith started to shake, and that the only thing that they felt in control of anymore was when to cry. If you've walked through even a fraction of that, I just want to say, you're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You're not dramatic for needing support. You're human. And something else that's really important about this, IVF can't magically fix issues like poor egg quality, oxidative stress, thyroid imbalance, or DNA fragmentation in sperm. So if you're not ovulating regularly, if inflammation is high, if sperm quality is suboptimal post-reversal, or if nutrient deficiencies and toxins haven't been addressed, then IVF might not work either. You still need a healthy environment for conception and a successful pregnancy to happen. And that's why prepping your body before IVF isn't optional. It's essential. Because the truth is, if your body isn't in a good place for natural conception, it's not in the best place for IVF either. All right, that was a lot. And I know that we've laid out some of the truth about IVF success rates and the emotional toll that it can take. But let's talk specifically about what IVF looks like after a vasectomy reversal. Because while IVF is often pitched as a backup plan after reversal, most couples aren't told how different it really is from standard IVF and how much more complicated things can get if you skip the prep work. So if you're sitting here thinking, okay, if we don't get pregnant soon, maybe IVF will just bypass all of this, I want to gently pause that thought and walk you through this, what it might actually look like. Let's start with the most common assumption. We'll just do IVF and use the sperm from the reversal. The truth? Most post-reversal IVF cycles don't stop there. They usually involve ICSI, which stands for intracytoplasmic sperm injection, and it's where a single sperm is injected directly into each egg in the lab. Why? Because sperm motility, morphology, or count might still be low post-reversal, especially if it's been less than a year since the procedure. But here's what most couples don't hear. ICSI is not a magic fix. And yes, it can help fertilize eggs when sperm can't reach them on their own, but it doesn't guarantee a healthy embryo development, normal chromosomes, or even successful implantation. Because if the sperm itself is carrying oxidative damage, DNA fragmentation, or has been weakened by inflammation or poor nutrition, injecting it into an egg doesn't fix any of it. And here's something that catches a lot of couples off guard. If your partner's post-reversal semen analysis isn't quote-unquote ideal, some clinics may suggest skipping ejaculated sperm entirely and just doing a surgical sperm retrieval. These procedures collect sperm directly from the testicle or epididymis with a needle. And yes, this is exactly as invasive as it sounds. And in most cases, these surgically retrieved sperm still require ICSI because they aren't mature or motile enough on their own. So now you're dealing with surgery for him, IVF plus ICSI for you, higher cost, more emotional weight, and all without addressing why sperm quality might be low in the first place. And this is the part that really makes me want to flip a table. Very few fertility clinics take time to actually optimize sperm health before jumping into IVF. They focus on retrieving and injecting, not healing or improving. But sperm quality matters so much more than most people realize. Poor sperm health, especially at the DNA level, has been linked to failed fertilization, miscarriages, developmental delays, and lower embryo quality. And sperm takes about 74 to 90 days to regenerate. That means anything that your partner is doing or not doing right now will impact the sperm used 3 months from now. So if IVF is even on the table for your future, you want to start that optimization process now. Because going into a $20,000 cycle with unhealthy sperm is like building a house on sand. And IVF after reversal often comes with more complexity and often more questions. So you might face additional layers that maybe you weren't expecting or thinking about, like, do we want to freeze our embryos for later? What happens if we have more embryos than we use? Are we okay with using only one partner's sperm if the reversal didn't restore function fully? And what are the chances that we'll need donor sperm or eggs down the line? These aren't decisions that you should be forced to make in a panic. They deserve space, they deserve time, and you deserve full transparency before you ever sit in that consultation room. So we've talked about the numbers, we've talked about the procedures, but now I want to talk about something even more important, and the part that doesn't really show up on a lab report or in a treatment plan. Your heart, your values, your marriage, your peace. Because IVF doesn't affect your body, it affects your whole life. And yet, these are conversations most clinics never have with you. So let's have them here. First, let's talk about the embryos. Most couples don't expect to walk out of their first IVF cycle with more than one embryo. But if things go quote unquote well in the lab, you might end up with several. And then you're faced with questions like, do we transfer one at a time? Do we freeze the rest? How long will we store them? What if we're done building our family but still have embryos left? Are we okay discarding them, donating them to science, giving them to another couple? These are questions that touch deeply on your ethics, your faith, and your future. If you weren't prepared for them, they can feel devastating. I've talked to women who cry every time they get the storage fee reminder in their inbox because they still haven't made a decision about the embryos sitting in the freezer. They're frozen in more ways than one, stuck emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. So if no one's asked you how you feel about creating more embryos than you may use, that's a conversation worth having before the cycle starts. Then there's the emotional and mental load. You might be surprised by how much IVF can stir up inside of you, especially if you're someone who's been holding it together through months or even years of trying. During IVF, many women experience heightened anxiety and mood swings thanks to those intense hormone shifts, feelings of inadequacy, guilt, or failure, emotional withdrawal from their partner, trauma around injections, failed cycles, or losses, and even a loss of identity. Maybe your world has become centered around just one goal of getting pregnant. If you've already been through loss or you're carrying deep spiritual or emotional wounds from this journey, IVF can sometimes amplify those feelings, not resolve them. Now let's talk about the marriage piece. IVF changes things between you and your partner, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. When every part of your relationship becomes clinical, time sex, injections, appointments, transfer dates, it can be hard to stay connected in ways that first brought you together. For some couples, this season brings them closer together, but for others, it creates a strain that no one warned them about. That's why I always tell my clients, you have to protect your marriage during this process. Have the hard conversations, talk about the expectations, fears, boundaries, finances, faith, and even sex, especially when it's no longer spontaneous or emotionally connected. Because you're not just trying to bring a baby into the world, you're building a family. And that family starts with the two of you. And if you're somebody who walks with God, this journey can shake that walk in ways that you didn't see coming. You might ask yourself, why would God give me this desire if it's not happening? Is it wrong to intervene with technology? What if I'm pushing forward without surrender? Why do other people get to conceive so easily? Friend, I've asked most of these questions, and I want to tell you, you're not a bad Christian for struggling through this. Faith and fertility are deeply connected, and IVF often invites you to wrestle with both. So whatever decision you're facing, I encourage you to bring it to God. Pray about the embryos. Pray about the timing. Pray about the surrender, because your peace won't come from perfect odds or perfect timing. It comes from knowing that you're aligned with Him, no matter the outcome. So before you schedule that consult, before you sign the paperwork, ask yourself, have we talked through all of the possible outcomes? Do we know what we believe about embryo creation and storage? Have we emotionally prepared ourselves for this road together? Do I feel like I'm choosing this from peace or from panic? Because the pressure is real, but so is your permission to pause. Okay, if you've made it this far in this episode, first of all, I'm proud of you. This is not easy stuff to sit with. But if you're here asking the hard questions, that tells me something powerful about you. You're not just hoping for a baby. You're committed to creating the healthiest possible path to bring that baby into your life. And IVF might be part of that journey. And if it is, I want you to walk into it ready. Not just financially, but physically, emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. So let's get into the 5 things that I believe every couple should do before moving forward with IVF, especially after a vasectomy reversal. Number 1, get a full and functional workup. And I'm not just talking about those 3 standard labs that most OBs run. I mean a comprehensive picture of what's going on in both of your bodies. For her, this means a full thyroid panel: DSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and antibodies. Reproductive hormones: FSH, LH, estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA, AMH and vitamin D, inflammation markers like CRP, blood sugar and insulin resistance, nutrient deficiencies like B12, iron, zinc, and magnesium. And for him, this means a semen analysis with strict morphology, sperm DNA fragmentation test, hormones including testosterone, LH, FSH, prolactin, and estradiol, and oxidative stress and toxin exposure. These tests give you answers, and the answers give you options. So don't let anyone push you toward IVF until you had a full look under the hood. Number 2, optimize nutrition and lifestyle. This isn't about cutting every carb or going vegan overnight. This is about creating an internal environment where your body feels safe to conceive. For both partners, focus on whole, nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory foods. Eliminate seed oils, refined sugars, and processed junk. Prioritize good fats, clean proteins, and colorful veggies. Support blood sugar balance because insulin impacts hormones for both sexes. And hydrate well with minerals and avoid overdoing caffeine or alcohol. Also, sleep, stress, and movement matter. Poor sleep and high cortisol will tank your reproductive hormones faster than you think. This is the foundation that helps everything else work better, IVF included. Number 3, support sperm health like it matters, because it does. If you're doing IVF post-reversal, don't skip this step. Male fertility is not just about count. It's about morphology, which is the shape, motility, which is movement, DNA integrity, inflammation levels, and antioxidant status. And obviously, sperm regenerates about every 70 to 74 days. So what he's doing now is shaping the sperm that you'll be using 2 to 3 months from now. To improve sperm health, make sure you're removing endocrine disrupting toxins, plastics, heavy metals. Make sure your personal care products don't have any of those things in them. Add antioxidants like CoQ10, vitamin C, zinc, omega-3s, and a high-quality multivitamin. Reduce alcohol, increase sleep, and support testosterone naturally. Consider phototherapy, acupuncture, or light therapy if inflammation or oxidative stress is high. Remember, sperm is 50% of the equation, and it has a massive impact on embryo health. Number 4. Address root causes. If you've been told that you have unexplained infertility, chances are it is explainable. You just need to look deeper. So ask yourself, is there a thyroid issue that's been brushed off just because it's quote unquote in range? Is there low-grade inflammation or autoimmune activity? Have you addressed insulin resistance, especially if you have PCOS or irregular cycles? Has endometriosis been ruled out or even treated properly? Do you have painful periods, short luteal phases, or recurrent loss? IVF doesn't fix these. In fact, they can make IVF less likely to succeed if they're not addressed first. Healing doesn't have to be perfect before conception, but if you remove the major roadblocks, everything flows more easily. And number 5, learn to track your fertility accurately. I mean, this might sound basic, but I can't tell you how many couples that I've worked with who thought they were timing things right, but they were missing their window by a few days or misunderstanding what their body was really telling them. And fertility tracking is more than just logging your period into an app. You need to know when you're actually ovulating, not just assuming, how to read your cervical mucus, how to use OPKs properly, what your BBT is telling you about progesterone and timing, and if your luteal phase is long enough to support implantation. This is a skill, and if no one's taught you yet, you're not behind. You're just overdue for the education you should have gotten years ago. When you understand your body's rhythm, you take back your power. Whew, that was a lot. So if you're still with me, thank you for being brave enough to listen all the way through, not just for the facts, but for the heart of what we covered today. Because here's the thing, IVF can be a beautiful, life-giving option for some couples, but it's not the right next step for everyone. And if no one has told you that before, I'm honored to be the one who does. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, what if we're missing something that could work naturally? What if we jumped into treatments before truly preparing our bodies? What if this path doesn't feel aligned, but I'm too scared to say it out loud? If that's you, I want you to know you're not behind. You're not broken, and your story isn't over just because it's taking longer than you hoped. This journey asks so much of us. It stretches our faith, our patience, our identity, and our capacity to keep hoping. But I promise you, hope is never wasted. And neither is the work that you're doing right now to get informed, intentional, and supported. So if today's episode left you with more questions than answers, or maybe just a little voice saying, we need to look at this differently, I'd love to walk through it with you. You can book a free fertility consult at susangladstein.com. We'll walk through what's going on in your journey, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and map out some real practical next steps. No pressure, no overwhelm, just clarity and support. You don't have to figure this out on your own. Not anymore. And if God has placed the desire for a child on your heart, I truly believe He did it for a reason. Your timeline might look different. Your path might feel messy. But the one who writes miracles is still in the business of doing them. So whether you choose IVF, continue trying naturally, or explore every path in between, make sure you're not making the decisions from fear, but rather from faith, wisdom, and peace. And just know, I'm over here cheering you on and praying for you every step of the way. Thank you so much for joining me on Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal. I hope you're feeling encouraged and more hopeful on your journey to growing your family. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra support. I absolutely love reading your reviews. They mean the world to me. Like, seriously, words of affirmation are my love language. So let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram at conceivingaftervr and join our Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal Facebook community for even more support and encouragement. I believe that God placed the desire for a child on your heart for a reason, and I'm grateful to walk alongside you in this season, encourage you, and to help you find joy in the journey, trusting that His plan is greater than we could ever imagine.
Thanks for listening.